Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel. Today I will tell you a very interesting story. I hope you like it. Mom came up with a text security code. She just used it. Growing up, my mother was the whole world to me. Dad left us when I was 7 after my mother found out about his cheating. He beat her for daring to file for divorce, but she kept the house and she cut him out of our lives. Mom decided to focus on herself and taking care of other women. So she worked at various women's crisis centers, shelters, and similar places. Eventually she became a court rep, a social worker dealing with abused women and children, and she really helped them out of difficult situations. She knew for a fact that the world was not always kind to women. Being such an amazing woman, she knew how hard it was for a girl to grow up. So she came up with safety codes and phrases to protect me. She also made a separate rule so that if I was in danger, I would call or text her in a special way and she would come to my aid, without finding out or consequences. That is, if I was in trouble, I could let her know without worrying about her reaction or fearing punishment. She said she understood that being a teenager meant making independent and sometimes stupid decisions, but they didn't have to cost me my health or my life. She put my safety first. When I was 11, I had my first sleepover at a friend's house, and I wasn't comfortable. I wanted to go home, but I didn't want to hurt her feelings. My mother and I's code is double punctuation. If I put two identical signs at the end of a sentence, it means I need help or I want to leave. But I don't want anyone around me to know about it. Hi, your uncle just called, and it looks like I'm going to have to pick you up. Will you tell your friend you have to leave? Do I have to? Yes, please, come on. This way I was able to save face and write everything off to my mother. I did use it sometimes, but rarely. And even though I lived in a fairly quiet neighborhood, in a small town on the outskirts of the university campus, it was nice to know that I always had this insurance. I was developed for my age, and my friends were mostly kids from crisis centers, and for the most part they were very quiet. I occasionally wandered into these shelters, and the women there would talk to me as an adult, which was funny, considering that almost half of them were my peers rather than my mother's. I didn't hang out with bullies, and I never did anything stupid until college. And when I went to college 2 years earlier than usual, I quickly realized how quiet my town was. I finished high school early, back at 16, and the college of choice was very close to my town, and I could live at home and commute to campus and stuff like that. I got drunk a couple of times, but my friends and I were always safe, and I didn't drive. The first dorm party, it was too much, exciting, but unsettling. Eventually I found a quiet corner where a few people were relaxing. I made small talk with a cute guy, and he offered to give me a drink. I know, stupid, naive girl. But I said yes, and didn't think much about it, and drank. About 10 minutes later, I felt really weird and went to the bathroom. I had my phone in my hands. A new acquaintance was politely knocking on the door, and I could barely see the screen while I texted my mom. At street name, can I stay a little longer? Absolutely not. I will come and get you now, young lady. That's all I managed to type with my consciousness rapidly fading. And then that guy managed to open the door and help me out of the bathroom. He checked my phone, saw the messages, called me a pathetic child with a vile chuckle, kicked me in the thigh, and left me sitting in the hallway. I knew for sure that Mom had prevented something terrible from happening. Part of our agreement was that if an address was mentioned, it was something emergency. It meant danger. She had raised a habit in me of finding out the address, writing it down, copying it into notes, whatever. So I memorized addresses before I went to parties. And that night, my mom saved me. She didn't swear that I was drinking, that she told me not to go. She just worried about me and wanted me to be okay. That night she took me to the hospital. They put me on a drip with saline and something else to get the drug out of my system as soon as possible. I only remember my mother sitting by the bed with a look of relief on her face, though she was still worried. I didn't realize how scary this situation could become, but she did. I couldn't remember any more times when a code was needed. My mother talked to me when I sobered up and told me the brutal truth about what sometimes happens to young girls in today's world, and I've been very careful ever since. Last month, my mother died of a heart attack. She had always had a weak heart and been saving up for a pacemaker, but it took time. I was completely devastated. I always thought my mom would be a foundation in my life at all times, a reliable and stable support for me. In my eyes, she was immortal, and now I didn't know how I was going to go on without her support and protector. I just didn't know what to do. I cried when I opened the door and realized she was dead. It was horrible to know that she would never be there for me again. I texted her and the phone rang on the table. I looked at it and wanted to throw it across the room, but I would never do that. I could never. She loved the damn phone. She loved having pictures and music and playing games with it everywhere. She could sit and watch short films and funny clips all night long. The smartphone was her secret weakness. Then a thought occurred to me. I remembered what the funeral director had told me: you can put anything that was dear to her when she was alive into the casket. And that's when I decided to copy all the data and pictures from the phone to my computer and give the cell phone to her. I liked the image of her playing her games and laughing at the video in the afterlife. The thought made me laugh and ease my grief a little. I knew it was silly. Plus, I didn't know how much the bill paid. But I couldn't stop thinking about how right it would be. She always joked that she would come back as a ghost to play games and watch videos. So why not give her something to support her until she figured out how to get to me to help her? The funeral was sad, but beautiful. A string of women came up one by one and told me how much my mother had changed their lives. I thought of all the lives she had touched and the people she had helped. Despite the grief, I couldn't help but be proud of her and, of course, proud that I was her daughter. Returning home after the wake and more condolences, I finally sat down on my mother's couch and turned on the sound for the first time since the funeral. Immediately a missed message beeped. "Mom, I love you too." "Me, please don't text me again from this number. It's the number of my mom who just died." I was waiting, and I saw someone typing back. My heart went in my heels as I waited for a message from someone who had my mother's phone. "Mom, I'm at address. Can you visit me?" My heart froze. I had missed something in the first message. I was too scared. I reread the second message, and it had a cemetery address and 2 question marks. She must have been buried alive. I called the funeral director and begged him to meet me at the grave, explaining that something was wrong. He swore that she could not be alive. No autopsy was done, but there was no doubt. And I cried and begged and showed him messages until he finally agreed to meet me and help me figure out what was going on. I put that cell phone in the coffin myself before it was closed and put down. The phone couldn't have been in anyone's possession but hers. Finally, convinced that nothing would extinguish my panic, he announced an urgent exhumation. The ground was still loose, so it was easy to unearth. They opened the coffin, and the phone was in her hand, not in the purse next to where I had put it. There was an unsent message on the screen. Mom, underneath me. The first body was found that day. Teenage girls had disappeared for years before, and though they had been missing for 6 years somewhat more frequently, they were thought to have run away from home. The families begged the police to find the children, but their pleas were not heeded. It turned out that a cemetery watchman had been watching the grieving families. He stalked those girls and then kidnapped them on their way home from school. He would kill them and hide them in dug graves before the coffins were lowered into them, and then fill them in, hiding the evidence. When they found his map and souvenirs, they were able to close 27 missing persons cases. The evidence that most frightened me, which the detective reluctantly showed me, giving in to my insistence, was a stack of pictures from my mother's funeral, with my 13-year-old niece circled on them. I know what you're going to ask, so I'll tell you right away, yes. I got the last message from my mother. A week later, when the fuss had died down, I was able to grieve again. It's hard to grieve when everyone around you is pestering you with questions and calling you a hero. I knew I wasn't, but they didn't want to hear my story, and just assumed I'd noticed something before the casket was lowered. So when I finally managed to be alone, sit alone, and turn on one of my mother's favorite horror movies, I wrote her again. I wasn't expecting anything supernatural. I just thought it would give me a farewell to the past. Me, Mom, I love you. I miss you very much. I hope you're happy where you are now. I put the phone away, wiped the tears streaming down my cheeks. The movie was still as good as when we'd first seen it with her. The emotions were overwhelming. I literally jumped when my mom's ringtone played. Mom, you too happy?